Hey everybody, just wanted to do another update here on my Red Claw crab tank. And I'm sorry I didn't wipe the glass down or anything. I'm not prepared to do this. I just kind of sat down and wanted to shoot some video while I had a few things on my mind. One is I shot a video yesterday and I talked about how I thought that I'd been losing crabs and I'd been having dead crabs, and I wound up coming to the conclusion that it was actually the sloughed remains or the sloughed exoskeletons of the crabs that are in here and not dead crabs. Now, I feel a little silly saying that because it's pretty obvious when a crab sloughs and it's not a full crab anymore, but these actually seem a little different to me. I do have plenty of experience with animals sloughing. I've had shrimp and crayfish, and living here in Maryland, I'm very familiar with the Maryland, the Chesapeake Bay blue channel crab, and when they slough, it's very clearly a discarded empty shell. When a shrimp or a crayfish sloughs, it's very clearly an empty or discarded shell. And when these little guys slough, their shell still seems to have a lot of weight to it. And it's, to me, it just seemed like a crab that was dead and kind of the color faded, and it was a real pale sort of light orange color. And again, I'm sure it's just the sloughed exoskeletons, but they just seemed odd for what I'm used to from a sloughed shell from an animal, from a crustacean. So no biggie on that one. It just seemed a little odd to me. It took me a while to actually figure out that that's what's going on. I kind of thought that in the beginning, but then I thought, it's just this doesn't look like a sloughed shell. It looks like an actual dead crab. But, I have as many dead crabs now as I have in the tank, so obviously they're not dying, and so that just sort of rules that out. The other question I got asked was, why do I save the dead crabs in my freezer? And that is simply because if when I bought them from the big chain store, if they die within the first 2 weeks, you can take them back and get your money back. And so I'm just in a habit of putting my dead animals like that in the freezer when I first gotten them or whatever, and then over time I just decided I was going to save them to see if my suspicions were right. Was I actually getting more dead crabs than were actually in the tank? And so far that appears to be the case. So I think that's what it was, and that's kind of answers those questions about why I saved the dead crabs and why I wasn't really sure what I was looking at. So moving on, talking about some of the things that I do want to talk about in this tank that I find interesting is, one, I forgot to mention the other day when we were looking at this tank. If you see this big patch of moss right here, that had kind of slumped over and was laying sort of half down in the water. So I picked it up and I kind of tucked it back up against the filter, which is what this larger lump of moss back there is. That's actually the filter unit. And when I packed it back up against the filter, it felt lumpy and weird. It didn't seem right. And then, of course, a moment later, it actually started moving. And what I found out was that is the home of one of the crabs. You can kind of see this gap right here in the front. It usually comes out right there and kind of sits there, half in the water and half on top of the moss. But it lives under that moss. It's burrowed itself out a nice little cavity under there. And occasionally I will actually see movement back there. You can see sometimes, if you look back into there, actually I think with that little bit of red right there is the crab I'm talking about. So you can tell that's sort of a hollowed out cavity back there. That is the home of one of the crabs. So they do indeed spend a lot of time above the water. If you look at this end of the tank, in this container here, not the crab we see next to the container working its way through the moss like that. It's really fascinating watching them pick through the moss or pick through the dirt and just put little things in their mouth. So they're finding some stuff in there to eat, if not the moss itself. But that container right there actually has a cavity dug out. If you look in the far right corner, you can kind of see how it looks like a cavity. That actually that's a hole that goes down and goes underneath that moss, and there's another crab that lives in there. And I've got quite a few of them around the tank if you just stop and start looking for them. I will also point out, if you can see them right there, 2 more little tiny baby fish swimming around. So I was kind of scratching my head as to how that happened. I mean, I kind of obviously know the basics of how that happened, but I don't recall having any female fish in the tank. And this crab here in front of us is on a nose stand because he's got a little piece of algae wafer down there, and he sort of went face first down in to get it. So I have Endler's guppies in here, but apparently right there is a female guppy. And I don't know whether the Endlers are crossbreeding with her, or if just, I know guppies can carry babies or carry sperm for a long time and have babies much further down the road, even when separated from males. But it apparently is either pregnant again or it's still having babies from before. But I've got little babies now swimming around in my crab tank, so I don't know what I'm going to do with them. You can see this little crab over here. I got another one that's back up there. So there's quite a few crabs in here. I counted 9 the other day. I could see all at the same time. So there's at least 9 crabs still in here. And I think at the most I had at one point was like 12 or 14. And I know some of those actually did die. So I don't have that many in here. But I think I still have at least 9 or 10 crabs in this tank. And it is a 20 long. I did have somebody asking about how to set a crab tank up like this. As I mentioned, these crabs need as much or maybe even more land than they do water. But you'll notice this tank has a lot of places for the crabs to be able to get out of the water and climb up onto surfaces. And you can see clearly that 2 of them actually have made their little homes above the water. So don't think a crab tank, like for these crabs anyway, is going to be one that's mostly aquatic and maybe has like one little floating something or one little shelf or ledge for them to get out on. You really do need more land than water. You need lots of places for them to hide if you're going to have more than one. And you need brackish water. They are a brackish animal, so you need low-end brackish water, which really limits the amount of fish that you can keep with them. As far as I know, they don't really go after fish, or they don't bother fish. And even from when I feed them the shrimp pellets and stuff, they don't seem to be that interested in meaty food. They seem to be much, much more interested in a vegetarian-type diet. So I don't see any issue with mixing them with fish. You just need to use fish that are okay in low-end brackish water, like live bears. I'm considering putting a small variatus or platy or something in this tank, but I still think that's probably a little low on the amount of water I would need to comfortably house a fish. But something like a platy would help me keep my little baby guppy population in check. So I've got another tank that's loaded with little baby guppies, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing with them soon. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this tank. I know I've been kind of obsessed with my native tank lately. We will be talking more about that tomorrow. But today I just wanted to shoot something a little bit different, and I haven't talked about this tank for a while. So there you go. Alright everybody, thanks again for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss anything I got coming up. Don't forget, this is my Red Clawed Crab tank. Thanks again for watching this one. I'll see you real soon in the next one.